So first of all, I'd just like to applaud everyone for participating. I've done this for many, many years now. I do feel myself, being a big cheerleader for the program. And more so now than ever, with obviously the political issues we're going through, like entrepreneurship in Canada this is such an important part. It's been a part of my career. I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions. How many people in the room here are new to Canada, like weren't born in Canada? Yeah, congratulations. I, myself, have had tremendous success working with entrepreneurs that are new to Canada. It's phenomenal in Canada how we applaud going to university, becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, but entrepreneurship seems to be something falling through the cracks. And if we didn't have our immigration programs that we do and fostering this culture of innovation, I myself, every success story I've had, and I'm glad that they've been there, have almost all been started by new immigrants, and I applaud and continue to support that. So welcome, and however we can help you better understand the Canadian program, make the Canadian programs better, because I think we need some fixes there as well. Fantastic. So first of all, applaud you all for being here, and let's build some great businesses. I used AI this year because I promised Angie, and if you go on YouTube, you can see my past presentations. They were Financial Models 101, kind of the science of it. This year I've taken a different bent, and even though it's my busy season, I had the value of AI. I had no excuse. So I built it with beautiful AI in like 5 minutes, which was rather remarkable, and applied ChatGPT in a number of ways. And voila, I have a new, uh-oh. It's not advancing. It worked earlier. We might. Ta-da! Okay. So yeah, it was rather remarkable. I just took my PowerPoint from the prior year, put it in this, and it just reformatted everything. So my day job, I'm a CPA in Illinois. I spent part of my career down in Silicon Valley with PricewaterhouseCoopers. My eldest daughter is an American, so the issues that we're going through are a little close at heart. I'm the CFO for 3 public companies and a couple of startups in the tech space. And my hobbies are Red Thread Ventures, which is a little venture capital corporation, and Red Thread Ventures, which invests into non-VCC EBC companies. And then my latest one is Clean Street Society, which is a not-for-profit we're working on. So first of all, financial modeling, and back to that 101, or the art of this. I think they'll distribute this, but you can just Google or go to YouTube and see various videos. So the previous one, or there's a number of them, are my 101. So it's my CPA hat explaining what a balance sheet is, an income statement, a cash flow. And I will open it up to questions, and please be proactive with, I don't understand that term, because I got rid of that in this one to make it more what the art of talking about your financials is and talking about your financial model. I also took some time to look at other YouTube channels on and they were almost universally the best, highest ranked ones, not a CPA presenting. Almost all P&L and sales based presentations, and that is absolutely going to be in alignment with what I present later. Business model, financial model is all about selling something, okay? And it's all about predicting the future. In my mind, it is the map. It's a way to use a spreadsheet at the end of the day, absolutely, to map out where you think your idea is going to go. And it also conveys your understanding, your talent. 3 things that are going to make your business successful that I've kind of universally seen. Even my time at Deloitte and PwC, kind of training underling accountants to get through their uniform final exam, there was always like 3 things, right? What are the 3 things in success in kind of life? Education, and certainly as a startup business owner. Let's throw out some ideas. Yes? Persistence, absolutely. Great one. Innovation, yeah. preparation, did you say? Yeah, perfect. Focus, okay? Yes. Operating cash flow, yeah, at the end of the day. All on the same, oh, sorry, go ahead. Pursuit of feedback, yes, that's great. In my mind, I'll summarize those because I think you're all hitting on. One is just your talent. Like, what were you born with? What are your skills? Do you know something? Yeah, I'm a CPA. It's my area of expertise. 2 is how hard you work. Like, how much effort do you put in to achieving your success? And the third one, which might have got touched on, luck, right? You don't downplay the amount of luck that you need. So the only one of the 3 things that you can really control is what? The effort, how hard you work at it. So applaud you all for being here to start. Like, it's the effort. And universally, the people that I saw that are successful put the hours in. They work their butts off. To think that you work as an employee harder than as a business startup, no, that's a fallacy. Running your own business is like twice as hard as a job. So anyway, I encourage you to go get your technical understanding from YouTube. We're going to focus hopefully on more fun stuff, maybe a little bit more interactive. So that'll make it a little more interesting for me. And if you're not giving me ideas, I'm going to throw ideas back to you, because that's the art. There's no right answer in these business competitions and building a business. It's actually the journey of exchanging ideas, getting better insights from people who might been there before, might have learned lessons the hard way, the right way in the past. So let's keep going. So the other thing that ChatGPT did for me very elegantly, which I needed to do, was also go back, what are the questions that the competition is asking you specifically? So that's the other thing. What I've done is I used AI to pull, how many of the people here have already submitted their competition round 1? So there's about half, and half are still going to be getting that in by the deadline. So this is of high priority to half of you, and half of you have already submitted. So what I did is I just prompted ChatGPT to go, given the current state of the world and hot startups, give me two business models that would be applicable to this competition. And of course, it spit out something not too bad, okay? And I will say, and I asked that question, like, are there any rules using AI this year? I'm a big advocate, obviously. I'm already starting to cheat. However, the value of these tools are immense. What we aren't going to, what we're probably going to avoid this year is spelling mistakes, grammatical issues. So I applaud those that are doing it. But at the same time, like, what about these 2 things is not very impressive? Well, from my perspective, they're really generic. I found them to be really generic. In the first one, which is kind of where I went, the term that most appealed to me was this concept of nudging, preventative care nudges. I don't know, I've made some investments and I've been involved in a ton of startups, but I read it and I was like, for the most part, it felt very generic, but that sounded a little bit innovative, right? Like it's a nudge. So that's where, how do you transpose what I suspect most of you will do, which is go to ChatGPT. This is what I want to do. Can you help me author it, right? In less than 100 words? And I encourage you to do so. But then the human gets involved, right? What about this do you think is appealing, right? Because everyone's going to look exactly the same, right? Like that at the end of the day may be the result. Everything will be. So how are you going to stand out from somebody else? And more importantly, and why I'm enthusiastic about the ability of AI to augment what you're doing as a business owner, is it speeds up your thinking, right? It makes you think and reread what, is this really what we're doing? Is there jargon in here? Is there any words that I don't understand? Because that's the other thing I think a lot of investors or people that are in the process of pitching their company or selling their business model is using jargon too often and making it really, really understandable and conveying a really exciting vision of what your business model will be. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it's perfectly casebook fine. You seeing the point? Okay, let's carry on. So for those of you who've got that submitted, that's the easy bit, okay, along with your submission fees. This is round number 2, and this is the one as a judge. I've been involved for many, many years, and I always, despite having been the presenter, I was always like a little disappointed in the results that you see in the finance section. Question number 4 always seems to be the weakest part, and I'm like, oh, Angie, you're gonna have to replace me because I'm just not doing a very good job of helping people answer these questions in a convincing manner. And we're gonna see why in a second, okay? Well, maybe more so in the next section, but it's here. So again, read it. I mean, it's in a lengthy matter, and it's fine. Like, it's textbook correct. It's business model 101 correct. It's just kind of dull. Again, it doesn't allow you to really connect with what the story is behind it. And we're not going to dig into it. We're going to dig in later. It's just, and that's the potential value and problem with AI. And I would say that this is pretty generic for every section in the past that I've read. It's fine. There might be some math problems in there somewhere if an accountant's willing to like take the time to figure it out. But for all intents and purposes, it's a great answer. It's just kind of dull. So how are you going to stand out? How are you going to like bring this to life, right? Make this really compelling. And we'll get into it in a sec. This is round number 3's question. And it's kind of the similar story, okay? And I'm just going to skip ahead because you're going to all be spending lots of time looking at those questions. And here, this is a fantastic response. Similar thing, right? Now, I did find an error that I had to go back, and I was like, why are you presenting cash in a negative position? It's a subtle thing. So you actually have to be smart enough as a business person, back to these 3 criteria for success, to know, well, are your numbers actually correct? And if you are going to use AI, you better spot the errors that it's making. And sure enough, you're like, why would you present the numbers with a negative cash position? Doesn't that effectively mean the company is out of cash and you've hired everybody? Oh, yes, then let's correct that, of course. But other than that, you know, reading it through, it's formatted fine, it's highlighting these key question marks. That's good. The thing is, I can guarantee you, any accountant or anybody can make a financial model look any way you want, right? That's why it's kind of a silly exercise if not really done in the context of the rest of your business plan. Okay, it's kind of meaningless in some regards because I can make a financial model look like anything. It's the assumptions and the basis of how you arrived at those numbers that is the interesting story, okay, and the believable story. Because again, I'd say 80 to 90% of the highest, or actually 80 to 90% of all the submissions that I've ever seen, they all look exactly the same. Okay, short of the 20% that are just that have errors in them and those kind of things, which now should be completely avoided with using AI, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that gives you a little taste of what's to come. Now it's like a little bit more of, well, how do we liven this up? How do we take the AI and what is the accountant / business person going to add to the story to make it more interesting? So I've got like 6 steps, and this is what I presented in the past. And it is like not accounting, right? It's like the best startups are run by like engineers and salespeople. It's the step back into the rest of the financial, or the rest of your business model, your case, right? It's your Guy Kawasaki. Everyone familiar here with Guy Kawasaki? Yes? If you're not all universally familiar with Guy Kawasaki, please Google him. He has a very elegant, like 10-slide presentation that is like the default standard on pitching a business. But at the heart and soul of that is really an understanding of there must be some fundamental problem or opportunity, and you must have some solution, right? So understanding a market or having some domain area expertise, that's where it starts with this. Like, what problem are you solving? And what's the industry trend? Like, getting a handle on the numbers, okay? This is the overlap into the business model. Your story should all be surrounded in numbers. And typically, like, bottoms up is way better. Oh, we'll get 1% of this multi-billion-dollar opportunity is almost universally a terrible way to pitch your business. And I think despite saying this every year, I still see it in probably 20% of the submissions. Oh, the business is this huge market, and we'll just get 1% of it. It's like, it's just so lazy, right? So what is much better is coming the other direction, like from a customer perspective, right? And going, and I think I speak to it later, is like, find your first 10 customers, right? Name them, right? Go talk to them, ideally, right? And then once you get these stories in this interactive communication, that's why even this competition is valuable, because as you get out and start talking to investors and other people in the industry, you start pitching your story. And the sooner you can get in front of customers and start trying to sell them on the concept of what you're doing, presumably talking to industry experts, customers that are in the industries that you're focusing on, you will tease out these interesting stories. You're being a salesperson, right? And that's the way to start any good business. People are like quietly building the business in their garage and not talking about it, filing their patents without any customer validation. If I could get the money back from the companies that I've interacted with that have completely never sold a penny of anything, it would be disturbing, honestly. So the story is, get out there. ChatGPT, if I haven't thrown anything, ideas are easy now. Okay, ask ChatGPT 1,000 ideas, and it'll give it to you in like 30 seconds, right? Ideas are not that exciting. They can be if you do this homework and exercise and start telling these stories in your case materials, right? Oh, as you go in, I just want you to seed your ideas with what I'm telling you. Yes? Hold on, yeah.
Okay, so how do you, like you're saying, to not show like the huge market that we all are going to and to the 1% penetration that we want, but instead to talk first to the customers and then show the market. So how can I show you as an investor in my presentation, like I have 100 LOIs or whatever. How can I, with that, show you a potential growth, based on what?
Perfect. So it's basically a merger of the two concepts, right? So you have an industry with 1 billion potential sales per year. Of that, there's thousands of prospective customers, or tens, if not millions of prospective customers, depending on what you're doing. Go find the first 10, okay? And then go, oh, I talked to these 10, and then 5 were, I'm not interested, right? And these ones were subtly interested. Like, build your CRM, your customer relationship management, from day one. It's validation of what you're doing at the business concept level. Start selling it, and you're just running an opportunity, like a Salesforce metric on, okay, we're going to send out how many leads, how many ads are we going to put out there, X number will click on it and open it up, and X will just delete the email, some will be interested, right? Do that exercise. And now you're like, okay, I got 1 buyer out of the 10, and I got 2 that are interested when they get to their budget level. And now, then you take that and extrapolate it. And now you've proven that you can get to maybe even 10% of the market opportunity. It's just, the problem is nobody does that. They just assume it's 1%. So that's basically the answer, is that at the end of the day, yes, you are validating that your 1% may be entirely believable, but you got there from a different path in a way that's far more compelling, and in fact is that first customer and does pay you for whatever it is that you're building. So it's just a better way to do this. And you need to, you know, all of this in the context of competitors and really understanding what it is that you're building and doing. Okay, this kind of dovetails quite well into opportunity analysis, right? Okay, once you've kind of dissected the industry and opportunity that you've got, you know, what, you know, there it is. I'm off slides here a little bit, but now you're really teasing out like how exciting is your business opportunity, right? How easy was it to get to that one customer who says, absolutely, I need this? I mean, I'll even share, you know, a couple of, you know, great stories. How many people here have heard of a local fellow named Stephen Robinson? I know that guy in the back corner knows him quite well. Just a phenomenal local entrepreneur that I've had the privilege of working with in the past on a couple of ventures. His first business, Clear Vision, yeah, just a little business, an engineer, I think it was from UBC, and they developed this imaging technology for box manufacturers, right? So just manufacturing of boxes, it would just find defects. Great, little business. Got to it really quick, worked closely with some key customers, built his business with customer focus, right? Addressing what their needs were. Then he sells his business for a nice little return. Then a couple of years later, he takes the same or very similar technology, and I might be a little off on the technology bit, but then he starts dark vision. Okay, it's like a big stretch from Clear Vision. But this time he's using similar technologies to look down oil rigs to see flaws. This time it draws the interest of Koch Industries, okay? And much bigger check writers, the Koch brothers. So anyway, these are local great startups that build their businesses focusing on a customer problem using technology with absolute tremendous success. All of you can do the same thing. But it's going through the same methodology, customer focus, building it, you know, one customer at a time, and seeing that success. This comes into a little bit more of accounting, okay, and understanding the differences between sales, revenue, and cash. Okay? What's a sale? What's a sale? What's happening when you sell something?
Total income from your product or service provided to customers.
Yeah, I think so. Like, what happens when a pardon? What's the transaction of a sale? That maybe may. It could be as simple as an email agreeing to buy something, right? More typically, it's a purchase order. Okay, I'm going to get into that. I commit to buying something from you, which is different than revenue. Okay, what's revenue? I committed to buying your product. Okay. Not paid. That's the last one. Deliver. Revenue is the delivery of it. I could commit to buying something, but now you have to build it and ship it and sell it. Depending, I mean, this is old school kind of inventory type business. If you're a SaaS business, it's kind of instantaneous, so that might be the confusion bit. But then, typically, then you get paid later, right? It shows up. You got to make sure it's as you ordered it and it's correct, and then you pay for it. This is a traditional business model, okay? Most businesses run on credit card, pay in advance. So I'm just using this as more of like teasing out some ideas on like, well, I got to build a business model. Well, if your business model requires a sales cycle, then you have to understand that you have to write a proposal, write or standardize a process for getting purchase orders, sales commitments, build your Salesforce or HubSpot CRM, build salespeople, marketing team. All of this has to be built to power your business model. So you need to understand these subtle little differences because your business requires cash to pay for all of that, so it takes time. But your business model should understand this. So this is back to the, can you create a business model that incorporates and shows that you actually understand how business works? So that's where I guess there's a little bit of the accounting 101 required, that you just have to understand how to build a model that makes sense. Okay? Yes, sorry.
Is the revenue equivalent to when you have receivables?
Yes, exactly. So the question was, is revenue receivables? And it's very consistent with exactly that. But revenue can get much more complicated, right? You might sell something that embeds software. It might be a piece of, I remember one of my clients sold heavy, down in Silicon Valley, would sell to Intel, the huge equipment that was necessary to produce chips. These were hundreds of multi-million-dollar contracts, but embedded in that equipment was software, professional services to get it installed. It would take like a month to install. When's the revenue recognition, right? That's complicated. That makes your business model very complicated. It's ordered years in advance. So it comes down to really understanding at the end of the day that you know how business works and that you can model it out in your Excel spreadsheet and articulate to an investor that you have the sophistication to do this, to understand the working capital requirements of it, and that realize that if one day you want to be acquired by a public company, that you need to do this all properly. Okay? But it's as simple as just those three things. It's often messed up. People don't understand the difference, and that can be an early warning sign that you don't have the sophistication to be a CEO of a company if you don't understand just how simple business works. So that's, again, a little bit of my mandate. Make sure you better understand that. Okay, gross margin. Here's where everyone gets really excited, right? At the end of the day, whatever it is that you're selling has to have profit, okay? Now, it can change over time, and I've witnessed that in some circumstance where you sell things early on for very little, even back to that ChatGPT equivalent freemium. We just give it away to begin, okay? Why would you just give something away to the beginning? Yeah, supercharged demand was one answer, yeah. Validation, yeah. You kind of want to, especially in this day and age, you kind of, when there's no bleeding problem per se, like that that you need to kind of get people trying something to understand, oh, this does make my life better, okay? So that's like an entirely valid business model, is giving something away for people to realize the utility, right? But otherwise, it sounds terrible idea. Why would you have to give it away if it's such a great idea, right? But it's commonplace, right? At the end of the day, it takes, you got to tell the story of, well, we start doing this. And then once people see that there's a massive return on their investment, and then we can start upselling these other things, we'll make a ton of money. But you need to be able to articulate that. And it can be a very savvy strategy, too, that shows, okay, it's a part of your marketing strategy. So it's really about making your story interesting and compelling, because if someone's sitting there, I don't know if this is as exciting as what it sounds like. And then you're like, oh, if you have any doubt, this is our strategy, right? Better yet, if you had your first 10 customers and they're already signing purchase orders, then your story is like, is there any doubt? I have my first 4 or 5 purchase orders, or I've already got people buying it, even if it's like beta, right? Like it's early concept, if you can get traction with those customers. But the long story is like, how do we build economies? Like, how do we grow the business so that our per unit earnings, our gross margin, our profit margin goes up? Because this gets the venture capitalists, the investors very excited. So here, we'll give you more money to accelerate what you're doing, get the story out to more customers, get more people seeing the value of what you're delivering, and of course that will return their investment 10x, 100,000x. That's the kind of thing that you want to get. Simplicity is also something, despite, there are some complexities, but most of you are probably not selling multi-million-dollar equipment to Intel. Simplicity at the end of the day is the key to a good business model as well, right? Just getting to the key value drivers and articulating in a very convincing way why people are buying and valuing what you're selling. Okay, how am I doing for time? Okay, great. Key performance indicators. Okay, so like getting there, right? What are you going to need to build your business? Headcount. Who are your key hires? You were talking about getting off the ground. You're getting your team put together. So those early credentials are, how many people here are kind of solo entrepreneurs at this stage? Okay. Okay, awesome. Everyone's got to start with that idea. I would encourage, go get some co-founders. Go get some co-founders, yeah. Well, you're at the right place. That's why it's like, put your hands up, go meet each other, surround around good ideas and where you can complement. But it is helpful, especially early on, because even having other co-founders validates that you're onto something, right? Other than, if you don't do that, go get your first 10 customers, because that's obviously the even better way to do it. But obviously, to build a business requires a team typically, although we have AI. I think, Nick, you were saying you got like multiple AI tools, so it's much easier to build things, et cetera, faster and easier, which is true. And then do other things, like just get out there, start marketing your concept, even if it's an idea, build your follower base, right? How many people are on your social media tracks? I do that almost every pitch that we get, pitch deck. I'll just go look, do you have any social media? Is anyone following? Because that is a part of the sales cycle of transforming, oh, if I've got 100,000 followers on my YouTube channel talking about the concept of the product that you're building, that's kind of good validation that you're onto something. And then it's like, okay, as we now reach out, as we get to beta, and we get some traction from some of these 100,000 followers to buy the product, it just is kind of an early indicator that you understand how sales work, and that you're validating that your idea is of interest to people. So it's just these simple little things that you can do day one to start driving believability into your numbers and your business model, okay? Break-even points, customer satisfaction, churn. Everyone familiar with kind of those things? If not, I would just encourage you to just look them up or check out the other videos where I spent more time talking about that kind of stuff. Okay, this is the stuff that I think gets perhaps more interesting. But yeah, how many people here are raising capital as a part of their ventures? Okay. Good, yeah, so that's often the question. So value is always key. Whose company here have they kind of done a round of financing? Anybody done a round of financing yet at all? Yes. Or maybe it's out of context to ask that. I was just going to ask what the valuation. I'm going to take that off the table because it's probably too confidential. But I will say I was involved as a CFO with one of the first incubators called Boot Up Labs. Anybody familiar with Boot Up Labs? It was kind of one of the first incubators. Danny Robinson, dating myself now. But anyway, we had a philosophy that we would invest in companies with $1 million valuation out of the gate. Because I'm often asked that, what's a good valuation for any startup? And so we just universally were like, we'll just give you a value of $1 million. The value of a decent team and a good idea is $1 million Canadian. It's kind of meaningful today. But that's the problem. Valuation is in the eye of the beholder. Yes, you can hire a chartered business valuator. They would calculate the net present value, taking your Excel spreadsheet financial model, running it in perpetuity on a discounted cash flow basis on what your perceived risk of success will, and it will derive a value. Okay, if you go public, you would have to perhaps get a valuation. Yes, question? Oh, hold on so we can capture your question.
Thank you. So on a practical level, if you raised capital, how do you decide how much you as the founder get paid salaries? So like,
It's another common question. What's an acceptable salary for a founding team or a CEO? Again, it's all in the context of a number of situations, right? One, well, as a founder of a company that's raised no capital, what's your salary? Zero. Unless you come from a very wealthy family, or in fact, one of my recommendations is raise your first $25,000 or $30,000 from your friends and family. The simple answer to that is, in the context of your financial situation, your business model itself has to be reasonable, right? As well as what it is that you're trying to achieve. So when you first start a business, you're gonna have to bootstrap it, right? Like that's the friendly way of saying you work for nothing, sweat equity of sorts, so that you can build your MVP, you can build it, you can get to a point where you could justify that $1 million theoretical value, right? Like that's a little bit of my tongue-in-cheek way of saying, well, it's virtually impossible to assess an early stage venture because you don't have any metrics of substance to really properly value it. It's all theory. So you could talk to somebody with domain area expertise who's like, I know exactly what your business is and I think it's fantastic and I've done it before and I will help you. They will give you a higher valuation. Then you run into a VC who's like, I don't understand what it is, blah, 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 blah. I'll give you a very low valuation if they're at all interested. So that's where it's almost a game, right? There's no math. There technically is a mathematical way to do it, but it's more of the art of doing it. So back to the question is, setting a value that gets you to your next milestone is much more the smarter way to do it, right? So yeah, if you don't want to work for nothing for very long, then you might get to a kind of de minimis level of success, hit your first milestones, really have your first customers, be at the first point of traction, but just don't be too greedy with your valuation, right? I'd be the first one when I started first tech company, we set the valuation, I can't remember, it was north of $1 million. But before it was too late, I brought it way down to like $250,000 when I realized we weren't getting the adoption that we wanted. Now, why would I do that? Because we'd already signed subscription agreements. Why do you think I would just dramatically lower my value, which is extremely difficult to do legally if you don't get your timing right? Why did I do that? Why would I like dramatically drop the valuation of the business?
Did you want to buy more stock in your own company?
No, not quite. I'll just answer it. I didn't want a down round, right? As well as all those people who were the first investors were all my friends and family. So I would just be hurting them. So this is almost a lesson for everyone who's building any startup, is don't get too greedy on your own valuation because you can get yourself into trouble. Because obviously if you have to do a down round, meaning that, oh, we weren't as successful as we thought we would be and why we set this perhaps grandiose valuation, then you're in no man's land. Because now you kind of burn your reputation, you got to raise money, you got to, oh, we didn't do so well, we have to raise money. It's almost harder to raise the next round. Yes?
How do you do valuation for a company without revenue? Like, how do you guess how much the value of your company is?
You build a business model, you get your Excel spreadsheet out. Again, go watch the YouTube videos on how to build this out, start on month, and you build a financial model, your profit and loss statement, theoretically, right? But it's all about the story. That's what I'm saying is that, okay, anybody can build a spreadsheet. I could build you a spreadsheet that would suggest your company's worth $10 billion, right? Just add more numbers to it. The question is it believable, right? So the real value is in the story that backs up the numbers, right? Oh, we actually have the first customers, all the rest of it. Then the value starts to become real or believable. And it needs to be backstopped with this other lesson learned the hard way, is that don't get, like, it doesn't behoove you to overvalue your company early on. It just sets an even harder level or challenge for you to achieve. Because as soon as you don't, and things always go, I mean, building a spreadsheet is almost a game. It's a tool to help you course correct your business and understand where you're spending money, but at the end of the day, it's going to change. There will be unexpected surprises and things will happen. So that comes back to valuation. Just set your valuation, especially early on, a very reasonable number. If you're going out to friends and family, like at the end of the day, it's like might as well be investing in your own business. So it's not perhaps beneficial to overvalue your business. But it's the Canadian and perhaps German way. I've been working very closely with a company called Optigo Biotherapeutics, very closely in conjunction with a German group of investors. And we just invest in tranches in very short order based on very tight milestones. And it's fantastic. It's a lot of work for the CFO, but at the same time, it's such a good way. Whereas my time in Silicon Valley, here's your $20 million check. Go have fun and grow fast. It's obviously a dramatically different way. We'd all like to get that $20 million check, but I would say in retrospect, the utility and regiment required to do it systematically by driven milestones is much healthier. Yes?
How about if you put together your analysis, all the financials, and you suggest an EBITDA, and then you multiply to 6, and you have a number, and then you give your team quality a number between 0 to 1, and your market analysis and competitor analysis also from 0 to 1, and then for technology, novelness, and so on, is again 0 to 1, and so on. Your solution validation proof, or all those reports that you have. And the whole study also, again, another number from 0 to 1, and average them all together, and you come up like 0.58, and multiply to that 6 times EBITDA, and put initial evaluation for your company. How do you assess such a formulation?
Did everyone hear that? Like, it was a very rational way to kind of take a concepted value in Excel and apply other factors, which are really risk factors, right? I mean, the other way would be to kind of back into, what's the denominating risk percentage that drives the perpetual cash flow. However you derive it, that's an even more elegant way of just outlining, well, there's all these things that will impact the valuation of the business, the success of the business in the long run. Obviously, the spreadsheet is, like I'm saying off the cuff here, is that anyone can produce any set of financial statements. It is more about the team and the novel technology and all this other stuff that if you can bake into your numbers, it makes it much more believable, increasing that ratio that you were speaking about. Okay, well, this sounds fantastic. This is a 9 out of 10, right? Which is equivalent of decreasing the denominator, the risk interest rate, right? So yeah, you build that in. At the end of the day, it will be this dynamic with I love it or I hate it. Every investor will have their own opinion. And at the end of the day, the measured approach is be conservative. Build your valuation by proving your model, and raise money on an as-needed basis, ideally incrementally. It is much healthier. I've had a number of situations where great businesses that just went out of the gate at too high of a value, and then a little bit of things not working out correctly, they were in kind of purgatory. couldn't raise any more money. And then it was pride and people's feelings get hurt. And it's just the terrible thing from my perspective to see companies go through that. Whereas the ones that are a little more conservative have been generally much better off. My time's getting tight now, I suspect, yeah. 10 minutes, okay. The other one, there was a fellow I worked with early on, his name's Basil Peters, who was like the exit. And I think that was my kind of observation early on, was back to the Stephen Robinson story. There's been a number of really tremendous success stories. Some of the companies that I've been involved in got bought early, perhaps too early in some investors' perspective. But from my perspective, I thought it was fantastic for Canada. Because what we have is great entrepreneurs, great universities, great incubating resources, Shred, NRC IRAP, like early stage investors. We don't have the Bain Capital and the big VCs, but boy, we can incubate great little businesses. Then see if we can sell them quickly. Now, a couple of the things there. So one is like, know in advance who might buy you. Okay? You never kind of want to build your business necessarily to be bought. You want to build a good business. But along the way, you want to be aware of who may buy you. From my perspective, this, up until our recent concerns, I was like, this is what Canada should focus on, is just building businesses super fast and selling them. The Stephen Robinson model, clear vision, dark vision, purple vision, whatever, and just spit them out as fast as possible to get, a couple of companies were bought by big Asian investors. We obviously have big investors south of the border. So anyway, back to kind of my raw, build your businesses, but know who might buy you. And perhaps at a lower valuation than your dream investor would like 100x. Like Quick Mobile, I was a 12th fastest, or the number one fastest growing company in 2012. I was CFO for that company. And we thought it was going to be a huge company, right? We had a huge advantage in many regards. And we were at the tables with some interesting potential acquisitions. And we were like, oh, I think we can get bigger. So in retrospect, I think we may have taken one of those early buyout opportunities. So it's just some lessons learned, the hard way in some regards. I mean, it worked out okay at the end of the day. But this is my last little bit. This is kind of the do this. We have a great startup, despite kind of the negativity out there and some of the politics of like how hard it is to grow a business in Canada and that there isn't enough incentives. I mean, my time down in California is like, we're way better than they are down there. What we lack are the Kleiner Perkins and the big VCs to write these huge checks. But in terms of the government incentive programs, the community, it's as good as it gets. And that's why I'm like excited about this. Do all these things. Register as an EBC. My little backstory on EBC is kind of my last story. Was one of the first investments we made with Red Thread was this little company called Uni Express, and that was the first thing we did. So it's like, immigrant and startup in Richmond. Hey, can you help us? Of course I can help you. We'll get you lined up with a good lawyer, John Conlon at Fasken. Okay, fantastic. We'll get you applied for EBC, okay, this BC incentive program. We'll put that in place. Oh, and I really like what you're doing. They were up against Van Tuan, like that big growing restaurant delivery, Chinese delivery company, and they were like, we're kind of in competitive, but we're gonna have to pivot out. So they're doing like last mile delivery pre-COVID, and then COVID hit. And then everyone needed like that last minute mile delivery. And then 2024, they were the 11th fastest growing company in North America out of right here in Richmond. So that was a great investment for us. Just kind of following this list. Get some good programs in place, good advisors, and then cross your fingers, because at the end of the day, luck of COVID, a few other success factors that obviously played their part there. So that's it. Hopefully you guys can repeat their successes. So, question?
Hello. Great presentation. So question on your last slide there. So I don't know if you heard of this or you've agreed to this point where for people, companies have raised the money before to the angel circuits, right? There has been quite a few voices saying the Canadian angels are just so much more conservative than angels from other places, which created an environment where it's hard for Canadian companies to raise money from Canadian angels, and which leads to the fact that it will make them hard to leverage their money on NRC, IRAP, and many other government programs, which requires somewhere between at least 30 to 50% of that upfront cash to be able to enjoy those government incentives. So if you're nodding your head, and I just want to ask, what would be your suggestion for companies that are finding hard to raise money from Canadian angels? How do they get their upfront 50% so that they can leverage on the others?
Okay, well, back to the get your first money from friends and family. Okay, that gets you down to the EBC rule, which all the BC angel investors will immediately acknowledge that getting 30% back on writing a $100,000 check is an easy one and is almost kind of a, do you know what you're doing, question mark. Okay, then I was nodding, but I don't necessarily agree that we don't have great angel investors around. We've got, angel investors have learned some lessons kind of the hard way. I'm in that camp myself. We have this thing south of the border where there's almost a ridiculous level of wealth. I mean, Lumicite, when I went in as a controller, like we literally dropped tens of millions of dollars in investments into, and we were doing things in retrospect, like we bought 21 mass spectrometers at $500,000 a piece. We only ever used one of them. Like it was things, that's where like I think a lot of companies grow up and see what's happening south of the border and are enamored. Oh, it must be so easy. But the reality is it's my experience with, you know, US VCs has been like a little odd from the perspective of they look for different things. My experience with local angels is that many of them are very practical. In fact, this investor that we met in Germany was very, very strict kind of like, but at the end of the day, as painful as that might be, it was all in best interest of helping you build the business. So I think if you run into what feels like a challenging investor, it's about communicating properly. They're probably critiquing your valid business model with some of what I'm raising here is that it's not telling anything compelling. You don't have any customers. So it can sometimes come across as negative, and it is. It's a challenging exercise raising capital. But for the most part, it's in your best interests, right? I think the community is here to help. They aren't going to write checks until you've kind of got to that point of validation. My chances with kind of the unis of the world, it was luck, right, at the end of the day. But I also, like, what was Peter Liu's, like, absolute critical success factor? He listened, right? He listened to what I had to say, did everything I told him to do. I didn't tell him very much, but it went very well for him. Like his success, we brought in a CFO, Michael Yang, who's now their chief revenue officer. So there's little signals that I see, but even back to that point is like, I think VCs or angels that you talk to and might be a little bit critical, if you go back and take into the consideration and come back to them, if they're open to that, it's a relationship, right? Like that's, raising capital is a big relationship that you need to take seriously. Even back to the, why did I drop my valuation? This is my family, right? Set your valuation so that it's fair, that you have the best interests of those investors and angels in mind as well. I want them to make a lot of money investing in their business. If you're not conveying that, if you're conveying that you're rich and I'm poor and you should just give me the money, it's not going to work. They didn't get rich from that kind of relationship. So anyway, that's just kind of feedback on there, you know, there are angels out there that can be, you know, more challenging than others. In my experience, some of the most challenging ones were the best. And I'd even go back to my CEO. I was like, he's just asking lots of really good questions. Don't take it personally. Take it for what it's worth and fix it or change it. Sometimes the stuff doesn't necessarily make sense because they have limited interaction. But yeah, that's the general approach with any VC. I mean, we have this other one where the stereotypical US VC, if they don't like the deal, it'd be like, oh, we only write like $10 million checks. You're just too small. And I always just use this, I hate that answer. This is kind of their easy way not to give you any feedback. Like one thing that I do try to do is always give feedback. If I say no, I'm going to say no with explanation, right? So I would ask for that, like as kind of a token value of, you said no, well, you know, give me some feedback so I can make it better. Yeah.
I have a question about like possibly like running as a nonprofit as well, or kind of like different business structure, like EBC. Like, how does someone from the States look at EBC compared to like a Delaware or General Canadian Corporation? And then how do they like invest? Like, is it possible for like an investor to invest like a nonprofit as well?
I'm in the process of starting a not-for-profit myself, and not-for-profits are, from my perspective, a very viable business opportunity. Of course, it sends a different message, so there's no profit incentive at the end of the day. But in my experience as kind of an audit early on, I remember seeing some not-for-profits where the salaries of the executive team were quite handsome, and I was like, how does this work? I think one was a church early on. Was just like, okay, this is a not-for-profit, but you know, so you can build a business that's a not-for-profit, that's a very sustainable lifestyle, right? So, you know, give some thought to that. This is a profit-driven, and most venture, because at the end of the day, sorry to answer this in a long-winded way, but there really is not an opportunity for them to invest in a not-for-profit, because there's no profit. It's called donations, right? So what you do is you create a charitable organization. They may be able to get a tax deduction for donating funds to your organization, but not investing per se. Any final questions? I'm available for any follow-up or, yes, sorry, there are some more questions.
Okay, you gotta wait. Do you have any last slides, John?
There's just kind of concluding remarks, and that's pretty much.
I was just going to ask, do you have any predictions for changes to the local capital landscape in the short term? Sorry, any changes to the local capital landscape in the short term?
Yeah, Mike's probably far better position. I was talking to Angie earlier about some changes that at maybe even a political level that I would like to see like implemented immediately, if at all possible, to create more capital flow. One being just the accredited investor rules in Canada are archaic and punitive to the poor, right? Like I personally, and I was never an accredited investor until I was like an involved insider as a CFO, and then started to realize like early on, one of the companies I could have invested in got bought by Twitter, Concept Media, Sumify, and I just like, holy smokes, how much money did all these, you know, very wealthy accredited investors in BC make? And that was a little like early sign. I better start making even small check writing a part of my kind of criteria, because my investments have far outstripped my services fees. And it's because I was investing in companies like all of you are starting. When you kind of see that roadmap to success, like Uni was a fantastic return, very, very quick. Same with Quick Mobile and Matza Innovation and Meta Optima. I mean, I've got a growing list of them, which is fantastic. But why couldn't all of you participate in that? That's because you don't have $5 million net wealth or $1 million of liquid cash. But why not? Why not 10% of your annual income, or 10% of your, or 5% of your wealth, so that everybody can participate. Because instead, through our RSPs, we just keep investing into RBC and BMO, and we just make the wealthier get wealthy and wealthy. And what happens with that money? Nothing. When I write a check to your business, it pays for your salary. My kids that are going to university might get hired by your companies. So we need to foster that quickly. Because right now, it's only the accredited investors and the angels that can be very finicky, and should be, because they will help bench stop other people. But why not write smaller checks? Like, that was even my experience. I can write a big check. Just write small checks. And there's also a limitation of 50 shareholders in Canada. Why? Why not 500 shareholders and no additional legal and just wasteful compliance requirements when we're just trying to get these businesses built and successful? So anyway, yeah, room for improvement. That was a long-winded. There needs to be some fixes. I would keep it positive. Meet the Mike Volkers of the world. There's others out there, and we will try to help as quickly as possible.